Al Gore's campaign to undo the Reagan Revolution, fighting to elect Al Gore president of the United States. Now, God must decide who to trust, Al Gore's Texas cheerleader or the one who stood with Reagan. Restore America now.
I'm Ron Paul, and I approve this message.
Absolutist in the bunch, someone who has consistently opposed federal government from having any role, and I think by your definition that isn't explicitly laid out in the Constitution. So this makes people curious. Is there a line with you? Where do you draw it? Does this include things like making cars safe, making medicine safe, air traffic control, controlling the jets above our heads?
Well, I think in theory, if you understood the free market and a free society, you don't need government to do that. And we live in a society where we have been adapted to this, and you can't just drop it all at once, but you can transition away from it. On regulations, no, I don't believe in any of these federal regulations, but that doesn't mean I don't believe in regulations. The regulation of the marketplace takes care of it. Just think if we had the regulations on the market that dealt with the bankruptcies, they'd have had to go bankrupt. We wouldn't have been able to bail out the big banks and the big corporations and dump on the poor people. Well, so the market would dictate it. You can't commit fraud. If you need detailed regulations, you can do it at the state level, but the federal government is not authorized to nitpick every little transaction. The way they use the interstate commerce clause is outrageous as far as I'm concerned.
Well, 30 seconds more for devil's advocate here, because would you then put it on the drug companies to say, no, we're bringing this to market, trust us, it's a fantastic drug. All the pilots in the sky to add to their responsibilities, their own air traffic control in an organic way.
What I said is theoretically it could be privatized, but who ends up doing the regulations on the drugs? They do as much harm as good. They don't take good care of us. Who gets to write the regulations? The bureaucrats write the regulations, but who writes the laws? The lobbyists have control. So the lobbyist from the drug industry has control of writing the regulations, so you turn it over to the bureaucracy, but you would have private institutions that could become credible. And I mean, do we need the federal government to tell us whether we buy a safe car? I say the consumers of America are smart enough to decide what kind of car they can buy and whether it's safe or not, and they don't need federal government hounding them and putting so much regulations on that our car industry has gone overseas.
Congressman, thank you. Over to Speaker Gingrich.
Thank you. Congressman Paul, another question from a Politico reader. Do you advocate getting rid of the minimum wage? Would that create more jobs?
Absolutely, and it would help the poor, the people who need a job. The minimum wage is a mandate. We're against mandates, so why should we have it? No, it would be very beneficial. But I was trying to get your attention a little while ago. There's 8 of us up here. I'm a physician, but you sure weren't going to ask me any medical question. But I would like to address that just a little bit. First off, you know, the governor of Texas criticized the governor of Massachusetts for Obamacare, but he wrote a really fancy letter supporting Hillary Care, so we probably ought to ask him about that. But mandates, that's what the whole society is about. That's what we do all the time. That's what government does. Mandate, mandate, mandate. And well, we talk so much about the Obama mandate, which is very important. But what about Medicare? Isn't that a mandate? Everything we do is a mandate. So this is why you have to look at this at the cause of liberty. We don't need the government running our lives. And I do want to address the subject of $2 oil or gasoline, because I can do much better than that. I can get you a gallon of gasoline for a dime.
Thank you,
Well, now I got to finish the sentence. You didn't give me the time before. I can get
These are
you...
rules that all of you agree to. That Brian and I let's hear that, yeah. Finish the sentence or you're all done.
Okay, I'm going to finish the sentence then. Okay, you can buy a gallon of gasoline today for a silver dime. A silver dime is worth $3.50. It's all about inflation and too many regulations.
Now, Governor Perry, I saw you nod your head. Done. I saw you nod your head, Governor Perry, at the answer on the minimum wage that would create jobs. Do you agree with that?
I actually was nodding my head when he said that I wrote a letter to Hillary, and we were hoping that she would be able to come up with something that would not leave the agricultural men and women, because I was the agriculture commissioner at that particular point in time. We had no idea it was going to be the monstrosity that's known as Hillary Care. Speaking of letters, I was more interested in the one that you wrote to Ronald Reagan back and said, I'm going to quit the party because of the things you believe in.
Oh, I need an answer on that. It had...
You've got your time.
I strongly supported Ronald Reagan. I was one of four in Texas, and one of four members of Congress that supported Reagan in '76. And I supported him all along, and I supported his all his issues and all his programs. But in the 1980s, we spent too much, we taxed too much, we built up our deficits, and it was a bad scene. But therefore, I support the message of Ronald Reagan. The message was great, but the consequence, we have to be honest with ourselves. It was not all that great. Huge deficits during the 1980s, and that is what my criticism was for. Not for Ronald Reagan's message. His message is a great message.
Funny thing about the mail, kind of tends to live on forever. To all of you, thank you. We're going to hold in place, take a quick break. Our coverage of the debate from the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley, California will continue right after this.
Congressman Paul, we've been talking just now about Governor Perry's rhetoric, but let's talk about his record. Just this morning, your campaign put out a statement accusing him of pushing for bailout money, supporting welfare for illegal immigrants, and trying to forcibly vaccinate 12-year-old girls against sexually transmitted disease. He's your home state governor. Is he less conservative than meets the eye?
Much more so, yes. Just take the HPV. Forcing 12-year-old girls to take an inoculation to prevent this sexually transmitted disease. This is not good medicine, I do not believe. I think it's social misfit, and it's not good social policy, and therefore I think this is very bad to do this. But one of the worst parts about that was the way it was done. You know, the governorship in Texas traditionally is supposed to be a weak governorship. I didn't even know they could pass laws by writing an executive order. He did it with an executive order, passed it. The state was furious, and the legislature overwhelmingly, probably 90%, I don't know exactly, overwhelmingly repealed this. But I think it's the way it was passed, which was so bad. I think it's such a bad piece of legislation, but I don't like the idea of executive orders. I, as president, will not use the executive orders to write laws.
Congressman, Governor Perry will get to you, but thank you. Governor Perry, we've had candidates talking about you.
Yes,
let's hear from you.
I kind of feel like the piñata here at the party, so
welcome.
But here's the facts of that issue. There was an opt-out in that piece of, it wasn't legislation, it was an executive order. I hate cancer. We passed a $3 billion cancer initiative that same legislative session, of which we're trying to find over the next 10 years cures to cancers. Cervical cancer is caused by HPV. We wanted to bring that to the attention of these thousands tens of thousands of young people in our state. We allowed for an opt-out. I don't know what's more strong for parental rights than having that opt-out. There's a long list of diseases that cost our state and cost our country. It was on that list. Now, did we handle it right? Should we have talked to the legislature first before we did it? Probably so. But at the end of the day, I will always err on the side of saving lives.
Yes, sir. Senator Santorum.
Rich, 30 seconds, I have another line of questioning. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to go back, Frank, to the Homeland Security question, because it's important for us to confront this. I helped develop the model for Homeland Security. It hasn't been executed well. The fact is, we have enemies who want to use weapons against us that will lead to disasters on an enormous scale. And the original goal was to have a Homeland Security Department that could help us withstand up to 3 nuclear events in one morning. And we need to understand, there are people out there who want to kill us, and if they have an ability to sneak in weapons of mass destruction, they're going to use them. We need to overhaul and reform the department, but we need some capacity to respond to massive events that could kill hundreds of thousands of Americans in one morning.
Congressman Paul, this same line, do you want to abolish the TSA? What would exist in its place?
with the airlines that are responsible for carrying their cargo and their passengers. I mean, why should we assume that a bureaucracy can do better? And look at the monstrosity we have at the airports. These TSA agents are abusive. Sometimes they're accused of all kinds of sexual activities on the way they maul people at the airport. So the airlines could do that.
Your best at LAX tonight.
I would think the airlines should treat passengers as well as a company that hauls money around. And they protect their money. They have private guards, and they could do it. Just remember, 9/11 came about because there was too much government. Government was more or less in charge. They told the pilots they couldn't have guns, and they were told never to resist. They set up the stage for all this. So no, private markets do a good job in protecting, much better than this bureaucracy called the TSA. Let me tell you.
Let me ask you about something else. It's related in a way. It has to do with Mother Nature. Before the broadcast, Senator Santorum's got flooding today in Pennsylvania. Governor Perry is just back from the wildfires out east. A Category 1 storm laid waste to entire areas. There's standing water tonight, Paterson, New Jersey. Many of the towns around where I live, 8 days without power. We had people eating in outdoor and public parks because the supermarkets were closed down. The question is, federal aid, something like FEMA. If you object to what it's become and how's it's run, your position is to remove it, take it away, abolish it. What happens in its absence?
Well, what happened before 1979? We didn't have FEMA, and that FEMA just conditioned people to build where they should be building. We lose the market effect of that. But yeah, my position is we should have never had it. There's a much better way of doing it. I mean, this whole idea that the federal government can deal with weather and anything in the world, just go to the federal government. FEMA's broke. They're $20 billion in debt. But I'm not for saying tomorrow close it down. A lot of people pay the insurance. I worked real hard to make it work, and I did that in my district too. But I'll tell you how we should do it. We're spending, believe it or not, this blew my mind when I read this, $20 billion a year for air conditioning in Afghanistan and Iraq, in the tents over there, and all the air conditioning. Cut that $20 billion out, bring it home, take 10 off the debt, and put 10 into FEMA or whoever else needs it, child health care or whatever. But I'll tell you what, if we did that and took the air conditioning out of the green zone, our troops would come home, and that would make me happy.
Mr. Kane.
They allow immigrants in legally, and it lifts all boats, and we need to focus as much on legal immigration. Congressman, your thought?
Obviously, it's a very big problem. I think we need to remove the incentive, easy road to citizenship. Nobody has mentioned the fact that they qualify for benefits as well, you know, the welfare benefits that we shouldn't have to give. The state of Texas shouldn't be forced to provide free health care and free education. But there is a mess down there. It's a big mess. And it's the drug war that's going on there, and our drug laws are driving this. So now we're killing thousands and thousands of people. That makes it much more complicated. But the people who want big fences and guns, sure, we could secure the borders. A barbed wire fence with machine guns, that would do the trick. I don't believe that's what America is all about. I just really don't. We can enforce our law. If we had a healthy economy, this wouldn't be such a bad deal. People are worrying about jobs. But every time you think about this toughness on the border and ID cards and real IDs, think that it's a penalty against the American people, too. I think this fence business is designed and may well be used against us and keep us in. In economic turmoil, the people want to leave with their capital, and there's capital controls and there's people control. So every time you think of a fence keeping all those bad people out, think about those fences maybe being used against us, keeping us in.
To my colleague, Jose Diaz-Balart, thank you. Time. Speaker Gingrich, Chairman of the Federal Reserve Ben Bernanke will come to the end of his term in 2014. Would you reappoint Ben Bernanke?
I would fire him tomorrow.
Why?
I think he's been the most inflationary, dangerous, and power-centered chairman of the Fed in the history of the Fed. I think the Fed should be audited. I think the amount of money that he has shifted around in secret with no responsibility, no accountability, no transparency is absolutely antithetical to a free society. And I think his policies have deepened the depression, lengthened the problems, increased the cost of gasoline, and been a disaster. But I want to take the rest of my time, Brian, to go back to a question you asked that was very important. Because we were asked the wrong question at the last debate. The question isn't, would we favor a tax increase? The question is, how would we generate revenue? There are three good ways.
The Ronald Reagan technique, put 3,700,000 more people back to work as of last Friday. You reduce government spending, you raise government revenues enormously. The Committee of 12 ought to be looking at how do you create more revenue, not how do you raise taxes. Second, you go to energy, exactly as Michelle Bachmann has said. You open up American energy, $500 billion a year here at home, enormous increase in federal revenue. Third, we own, with all due respect, Governor, we own 69% of Alaska. That's 1.5 Texases.
Yes, sir.
Now let's set a half Texas aside for national parks. We could liberate an area the size of Texas for minerals and other development. That would raise even more revenue, not the normal Washington viewpoint.
Mr. Speaker, time. Governor Romney. A long time ago, a fellow Texan of yours, a young student teacher in Cotulla, Texas, was horrified to see young kids coming into the classroom hungry. Some of them with distended bellies because of hunger. He made a vow that if he ever had anything to do about it, the government would provide meals, hot meals at best, in schools. The young student teacher, of course, was later went on to be President Lyndon Johnson. Do you think that is any more providing nutrition at schools for children a role of the federal government?
Well, I'm sure when he did that, he did it with local government, and there's no rules against that. That'd be fine. So that doesn't imply that you want to endorse the entire welfare state. You endorse all welfare. Anytime I challenge it, you're going to challenge the whole welfare system. No, it isn't authorized in the Constitution for us to run a welfare state. And it doesn't work. All it's filled up is with mandates. And the mandates are what we're objecting to. I want to repeal all the mandates. But yes, if there are poor people in Texas, we have a responsibility. I'd like to see it voluntary as possible. But under our Constitution, our states have that right. If they feel the obligation, they have a perfect right to. So don't always try to turn around and say that we who believe in liberty, we lack compassion. Because we who believe in liberty and understand the market, we're the only ones that really understand how people are taken care of, how they are fed, and how people have jobs. It's the market. It's never the government that does it. So this whole idea that there's something wrong with people who don't lavish out free stuff from the federal government somehow aren't compassionate enough. I resist those accusations.
Congressman, thank you. Somewhat hard to believe. The campaigns have notified us we're actually a few minutes over the time we were allotted for tonight, and so our questioning will have to come to an end with hearty thanks to so many people, most notably the candidates here on stage, but to the good folks here at the Reagan Library, the Reagan Foundation, notably Mrs. Reagan, to our partners in all of this, Politico, my partner in the questioning, John here, thank you very much. Terrific. And thank you all for watching. Our coverage will continue. One of the few things you can count on, we'll be back at this. There'll be many more of these discussions. That wraps up our live coverage of this portion of the debate from Southern California.
No, this should be the end, right?